Thank you for joining us for Family Basics 101. I'm Dr. Bruce McClure, the local minister at the Prince George's Church of Christ, and we're located at 7800 Central Avenue in Landover, Maryland. This week, we focused our attention on studying individuals that were somewhat notorious, I guess would be a nice term, but yet through the grace of God and all of the problems that these individuals went through, they were notorious in a way, they were interesting Bible characters. But I'm trying to point up this week that people can indeed change. The first part of the week, we looked at Rahab and how she lived a life of prostitution, ungodliness, and yet there was a welcome home ministry of Rahab, that when the two spies came back to the city of Jericho, Rahab received them not as an opportunity to make money as a prostitute, but she received them as messengers of God. And today I'd like for us to look at another story that is equally as encouraging, a criminal's behavior that is going to be reformed by Christ. You look at the lifestyle of Rahab, and today let's look at a criminal's behavior. A little bit of backdrop to help us appreciate the story. According to Roman law, the best deterrent against stealing was to punish criminals. Crucifixion during the days of Jesus, crucifixion of a convicted criminal was not only humiliating, but it also created pain that words cannot explain. There aren't words to explain how excruciating the pain from a crucified person could be. Crucifixion was more aimed at those who were alive and were considering a life of crime, and was considered the most severe mode of discouragement to others if they thought about participating in such antisocial behavior. See, the person that was about to be crucified, their life was ending. So the greater message, the greater warning, the greater deterrent would be, we're going to make an example out of this individual so that if anybody is contemplating walking in his footsteps, you may want to reconsider this. Crucifixion required the offender to become responsible for everything involved in his death act. For instance, he was forced to carry a large wooden cross through the streets. He was forced to endure the pain of being beaten by the Roman soldiers, and he couldn't fight back. He was forced to bow to the ground in humble submission and allow others to nail his hands and his feet to his death chamber. And he had no control over how long dying took. Plenty of times, to think about his criminal acts. He could be on the cross from 1 day, 2 days, and some have even said he could be there at least 3 days. But that's plenty of time to reevaluate and to assess, how did I get here? And looking around, there was nobody to point the finger at except the individual that was on the cross. And the other piece of that puzzle is everybody that were onlookers had an opportunity to say in their hearts, this person was either a criminal or this person was not a criminal. And no matter what the person argued from the cross, the people in the region basically knew the character of the individual. When you look at crucifixion, there was no way for a person who had been arrogant, walking around boastful, there was no way for them to cover their shame. Crucifixion just took the cover off of everything. The beatings were conducted with the individual being naked, and they could do nothing to hide their own shame. Because the pain was so overpowering, the individual forgot about being naked and being seen by the world. Can you imagine that? It's shameful to be hung out on a tree naked, but the pain of the crucifixion overshadowed the shame. And then a sign would be placed above the head of the individual to identify the crimes. For instance, Joe the horse thief or Jack the insurrectionist. Criminals on the cross had to decide, how do I manage the limited breath remaining in them? Because crucifixion was designed to basically asphyxiate a person. It restricted their breathing, their ability to get air. So the criminal had to deal with everything himself on that cross. It was never designed to be a comfortable setting. Every person who went to the cross understood they would never come off the cross alive. So how would they, maybe for the first time in their life, learn to manage their last waning moments in this earth? Well, there are choices when death is near. And that's why I like this story about change and people having the ability to change. Even as we approach our last breath in this earth. In Luke chapter 23, beginning at verse number 33, this is really the story that I've been leading up to that deals with crucifixion. When they came to a place called the Skull, they nailed Jesus to the cross, and the criminals were also crucified on his right and on his left. See, crucifixion was not unique. It was not designed just for Jesus. The Romans practiced crucifixion as a way to manage crime, as a deterrent. But you've got to understand that Jesus was crucified. He was not a criminal. Some tried to argue that, well, he's an insurrectionist. He's trying to take over the government of Rome. He said he was a king. So look at how Jesus chose to handle his last minutes of breath. Verse 34, Jesus chose to talk to God about forgiving others. Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. They are accusing me of being an insurrectionist, of trying to overthrow a government. And I'm here trying to bless every person, not just during my temporary time in this earth, but I'm trying to provide possible Jesus was thinking about other people. Look at verse 39. One of the criminals remained obstinate. So you're the Messiah, are you? Prove it by saving yourself and us too while you're at it. What arrogancy. What disrespect for God. Why not spend your last breathing moments assessing your own life, owning your own ungodliness, and crying out to God, who's right next to you on the cross? This criminal basically has made a choice that I can't be reformed. And yet his opportunity for reformation is right beside him. Look at verse 40, Luke chapter 23. The other criminal rebuked the other criminal for having a lack of reverence for God. What a way to spend your last moments on the earth, is defending the high and the exalted God we serve. Don't you fear God? Even when you have been sentenced to death, you haven't learned anything. We deserve to die for our crimes, but this man hasn't done anything wrong. We make choices, and this criminal makes a choice that I'm going to die physically. I'm struggling with breathing just like the other thief is struggling, a criminal is struggling with breathing. Jesus is struggling with breathing. We're all having this physical struggle. Jesus chose to talk to the Father about forgiveness. One criminal decided to remain obstinate, and yet this criminal decides, I'm going to use my last few minutes in this earth, my last days in this earth, standing for what's right. So what does he ask? Verse 42, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. He does two things. First, he defends the honor of God, which is Jesus' son. And then he humbly asks, would you please remember me when you come into your kingdom? It's as if he understands this physical life is going to be over for all of us in just a few minutes or just a few days. But I've come to understand that this world is not your home, Lord. You are from God. You are from heaven. But I'm beginning to figure out that when this physical life will afford me a home no longer, I've got to stand before the judgment seat of you. So will you remember me? The second criminal basically owns the shameful life he had lived. He said, I did it. The second criminal owns that he deserves what the Romans are holding him accountable for. Yet, his final cry is not for the physical memory, but for his soul. He's not asking to be taken off that cross physically. He's asking the Lord, have mercy on my soul, to be pardoned and given a place of respect and rest from all the chaos of life. One of the highest honors that an individual could ask for, especially in this Roman time period, was to have a decent burial. because a decent burial was connected to rest in the afterlife. And what even the pagans understood, what even the thief understood, is I don't want to go to the afterlife and be thrown out like yesterday's dishwater. I want, Lord, if I can't have a decent burial, Lord, would you please just allow me to spend a memory with you? And the Lord says, your wish is granted. Can you imagine a person living his or her entire life in rebellion against the Lord, and yet in their final breathing moments, cry out to the Lord for relief? If this individual could have a change of heart and draw nearer to the Lord, isn't that hope for you? Isn't that hope for me? That there's nothing that we've done in life that we cannot cry out to the Lord for. I would much rather see a deathbed confession, a deathbed cry to the Lord, than none at all. I want to encourage you to be encouraged that although you may have once been young and now you're old, or once you were younger and now you're older, it is never too late. As long as the blood is running warm through our veins, it is never too late for us to change our heart and turn our hearts toward the Lord. Let me encourage you to join us tonight at 7 o'clock for our midweek Bible study. And if you're not able to join us tonight, I want to invite you to return tomorrow to our Family Basics 101 midday Bible study. Regardless of whether it's tonight or tomorrow, I look forward to seeing you very soon. Don't be late and don't skip class.